So welcome everybody to the Solutions podcast. And we will be talking today about the Los Cedros Biological Reserve and the rights of nature case. And really exciting times to have actually got somewhere, but still not far enough. But the whole point of having these podcasts and these video logs is to focus on environmental solutions. I think we're all sick of the problems and we need to really be focusing on what we can be doing. So my relationship to Los Cedros is that I was first there 20 years ago and ended up going back there 20 years later, without realizing that I would be then pulled into this kind of case and get myself involved. I was asked by the great John Seed to go and write a report on Los Cedros. And so that's what I was thinking I was doing for 5 days. And I didn't realize the world was going to change and I would end up being in Los Cedros for almost 5 months. But what better place to be locked down in COVID than actually in Los Cedros itself? So yes, that was my kind of direct relationship. And so I've got a couple of guests with me here at the moment. Elisa Levy, who is the coordinator for the Los Cedros Scientific Research Station. And Elisa will speak to us a little bit about, why is Los Cedros important? What actually lives there? When I think about it and from a non-scientific point of view, it's just this amazing, magical, lost world, mossy, up in the clouds. And I was aware of this incredible amount of biodiversity. But so Elisa can kind of go into a little bit of like what science has been done in Los Cedros and what actually lives there. And then we will go on to Natalia, who holds a master's in climate change. She's the vice president of Organizations for the Defense of Nature and a member of the executive committee for the Global Alliance of Rights of Nature. And we will speak about the rights of nature case at Los Cedros and why it set a precedent and why it's important, not just for Ecuador, but for the world. So if we go over to you first, Elisa, welcome. She's in Ecuador at the moment. And if you could just tell us a little bit about your work at Los Cedros and why it is such an important place.
Okay, thanks, Nicola, for this space. So I guess to start with talking about the importance of Los Cedros, I think it's key to talk about the location of this forest, which is located in between two key biodiversity areas, which are the tropical Andes and the Tumbes-Chocó-Magdalena bioregion, which, like I said, both are world-known biodiversity hotspots. So Los Cedros, it's placed like right in between these two hotspots in northwestern Ecuador, so has like very high value in terms of biodiversity. And also these areas, both of these hotspots are known for the endemism that they have in their territories. This means species that are only located in these areas. And going to Los Cedros specifically, we have through the research that has been done in the scientific station since early 90s or technically since 1989, there has been incredible discoveries, for example, of endemic orchid species, endemic frogs, especially that are, these two groups in particular are groups worldwide that have very limited distribution. So that's why there are so many endemic species of orchids and frogs. So that huge biodiversity and endemic, especially endemic biodiversity, it's protected in a forest like Los Cedros. And in addition to that, we have other species, and many of them, unfortunately, especially speaking of mammals, are in danger of extinction. One of the species, Los Cedros in Los Cedros, there you can find the 3 out of the 4 species of monkeys that live in the western slopes of Ecuador, which are the brown-headed spider monkey, the coast howler monkey, and the capuchin monkey. Speaking of the brown-headed spider monkey, it's the most threatened species of monkey in all Ecuador, and it's also considered one of the most threatened species of monkey in the world. It has a very limited distribution, and we have a very good population at Los Cedros. So speaking of mammals, we have these 3 monkeys. There's also have been, we have a registered jaguar, we have registered the Andean bear or the spectacle bear, and also the puma in the reserve. So being an area with this high biodiversity in an area that unfortunately, it's also considered a biodiversity hotspot because has a huge threat in terms of the extension of this forest. We don't have much of this particular forest, which is like I said, in addition of being in between these 2 biodiversity hotspots, Los Cedros, it's a montane forest of the western slopes of Ecuador, and in the country we don't have much of that particular ecosystem left. Maybe less than 5% of the native forest or old growth forest of this particular type of forest is left in the country, and so that's why all these species are in such a high danger of extinction, and that is why this place is so special.
Yes, some of the data that I learned when I was there, I had always thought that the Amazon was, the most biodiverse place. And I was amazed when some of the scientists said, actually, Los Cedros has got more biodiversity than, in the Amazon itself. So we know so little about cloud forests. And one of the things that absolutely blew me away was at nighttime with the moths. And you would turn the light on and there would just be such an incredible selection of moths. And I mean, they're talking about there could be up to 800 different, species of moths there. So, it's really hard for us, in Europe to get our head around that amount of biodiversity. And so much in Los Cedros has never been studied. There's only really kind of small areas that were studied. So there's still a lot there that doesn't have a name. Nobody really, knows what it does and what its part in the system is. So it's a really exciting place as well for science, because there's so many new discoveries that can be had there. And I will be later speaking with Rue Vandergrift, who has done a lot of studies on the fungal ecology of Los Cedros and had some great, amazing new findings, and also working on the film documentary Marrow of the Mountain. So yes, it's a lot unknown. I think that, what percentage of Los Cedros has actually been studied?
Only, I'm gonna just throw a number. I would say that only most of the research has been done in the lower part of the reserve. We haven't done much research above 2,000 meters. So I would say that maybe 60% of the reserve hasn't been, even maybe a little bit more, but hasn't been really explored, because like I said, most of the research has been done in the lower part. And that's something that we as a research station have been trying to promote, scientific expeditions like the one we did with Rue and other scientists back in December 2019, no, 18, sorry. I think it is, 2018. We did an expedition to the higher part of the reserve, but still, it's due to the lack of trails, it's very hard to go all the way to the higher part, which is around 2,700 meters. We only got, like, during exploration, maybe up to 2,200, 2,300 meters. So most of that part hasn't been studied, or there hasn't been much research done. So definitely there are many things that haven't been discovered yet. And speaking of the biodiversity, like you were saying, compared to the Amazon, well, it depends a lot on the group that you were talking about. For example, in plants, there is more biodiversity in Los Cedros, but if you speak as a whole, there is more, like in between all the different groups, there is more diversity in the eastern slopes, like in the Amazon basin. But the particular thing about Los Cedros, like I was saying, are these groups like orchids or frogs, which are more diverse at this altitude of the montane forest, like around between 2,000, 3,000 meters above sea level, generally speaking. So we have these very particular groups that are more diverse, and like you said, moths in this area. And this also has to do, with the topography of the area, which is, there's a lot of steeps and mountains. So that creates many different micro ecosystems for the species to diverse and have like a more endemic species and a diversification of these particular groups, like I said, orchids, epiphytes in general, and frogs as well.
Just only a couple of weeks ago, I was sent from Los Cedros a new orchid species that still hadn't been named. So that was exciting to see a photograph of a new potential new species. And when I was there, one of the Bitty Roy, one of the lead scientists that's worked for many years at Los Cedros, she asked me if I would take a photograph of everything I saw. Spending so much time there, she said, just take a photograph of everything. Don't worry if you don't know what it is, which of course I didn't know what anything was. Just put plant, snake, bird, whatever, and let the scientific community identify it. And I set up an iNaturalist page, and I have over 500 observations from Los Cedros. So, some things just, it seems just mainly green. As you can see, those that are watching on the video, from behind me is a little bit of Los Cedros. And you don't see that many flowers because they're all up in the high canopy. And sometimes something might only just flower for a day, and then that's it. So being there for such a long period of time and going walking every day, because there was nothing else I could do, I was in an amazing position to be able to actually experience and live it, that diversity, to be in a place where, rivers, we could still swim in the river and drink the water. There's not many places left on earth where water is so clean, and so much study yet to be had. So thank you for giving that little overview. And I remember actually going up to where you were talking about the exhibition, which National Geographic were involved in this exhibition. And I did hike up there during my time to go and have a look as well. And it feels like you're entering even more so into this lost world. It's totally different the higher that you climb, and kind of coming out the tent in the morning, and there was a big jaguar print that had been sniffing around. So that was quite exciting. So yeah, it's great to remember the time there and speak to you. And so anybody that is interested, on the Los Cedros Reserve, there are the species lists for anybody that wants to see how there's over 300 kinds of birds, the orchids list, the mammals. So anyone that's interested can look on my iNaturalist page to see what does biodiversity look like, and to have a look at the species lists as well. So going over to Natalia, welcome. And great to have you here. And it's exciting times for the rights of nature. It feels that, has the time come where, we started off, the rights of women and the rights of Black people and the rights of Indigenous people. And has the time come now where we can really start talking more about the rights of nature? And, what does this really mean, the rights of nature, for those people that don't know much about the rights of nature? And how we were able to use this for Los Cedros, and how Ecuador is actually one of the first countries in the world that wrote rights of nature into its constitution. So over to you. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you.
Sure, Nicola, thank you for the space. And it's really important to be talking about Los Cedros and be talking to the world about the rights of nature, that it is indeed such a new paradigm. I've been working with the idea of the rights of nature since 2008, when Ecuador became indeed the first country in the world to recognize the rights of nature. And I remember that 2 years later, we created the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. And we used that exact phrase that you said, its time has come. However, it wasn't, back in 2008, it was very early. It was only Ecuador that had included the rights of nature. We had some experiences in the US with local ordinances that included the rights of nature, like in Tamacaburo in the US. However, it wasn't its time. However, now I can tell you that right now we cannot even track everything that is happening with the rights of nature. We're actually launching a tracker in March this year to know and understand everything that is happening around the rights of nature in the world. But now we have 36 countries that in some way recognize the rights of nature, either at a constitutional level, at a law level, at a regional level, for a city or for an ecosystem, for a river, for example, recognizing the rights of a river. There are 36 countries that now recognize somehow the rights of nature. And this is amazing. Every day we have more news and more cases of places in the world that are switching into this new paradigm that is recognizing that the nature is not an object, is a subject of rights that we need to respect and which rights we need to guarantee. And it's amazing because definitely Ecuador was this pioneer who gave such an important step towards humanity by recognizing that nature is a subject of rights. So yes, I can tell you that it wasn't back in 2010, it was now that definitely the time has come for the rights of nature, because I feel that we are, of course, in the midst of this great crisis, environmental crisis, climate change, loss of biodiversity loss, and it is the time for nature to be speaking through us and to recognize that nature has rights. And as much as it has happened before, where law has evolved, law is not something static. We have seen that with the women's movement, with indigenous movement, with abolitionist movement, that law can change and should change to recognize the rights, especially of those that are most vulnerable. And now it is the time for nature's rights to be recognized, and that is happening very widely around the world. And definitely in Ecuador, being the first country that recognizes the rights of nature, we are in the spotlight. So we should be giving a really good example, which is not always the case, but Los Cedros is definitely a great model of how the rights of nature should be guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's can you tell us a little bit about why it sets a precedent? You know, what was so different with the Los Cedros case, and why is it so important? And as you say, the media has been amazing. There has been, you know, incredible amounts of media around the Los Cedros case. And so I think the more we can keep talking about it and not just let it disappear, but to continue, you know, reaching out to people that haven't heard about rights of nature and how and why that case has set a precedent.
Of course, Nicola. Los Cedros is definitely an amazing case because we've had rights of nature since 2008. However, Ecuador has not been able to stop big extractivist activities like oil development or mining development. Actually, it was only in 2009 that President Correa passed a law to promote large-scale mining in Ecuador. Even when we had the recognition of the rights of nature, Ecuador started this whole era around mining, and mining is becoming one of the most important threats of the country. So I think this definitely sets up a precedent, because the rights of nature was able in this case to stop mining activity, demonstrating the biodiversity of Los Cedros and how and why nature is so important and so fragile that cannot really stand an activity such as mining activity that will destroy nature. So it definitely sets up a precedent, because the mining companies in Ecuador have legal permits. They are unfortunately legally allowed to destroy nature. And we, with the Los Cedros case, are demonstrating that this is not the case, that the mining activities should be limited, especially, hopefully in the whole country, because we have rights of nature, but especially in those places that are so biodiverse as is Los Cedros. So in Los Cedros, we're very fortunate as well, because Elisa, as you know, Ro, and so many other scientists have been doing research in Los Cedros. Actually, one of the in the amicus curiae, that is this tool that we presented to the Constitutional Court, we presented it with a letter with more than 1,200 signatures of scientists from all over the world who were supporting the rights of nature and the preservation of Los Cedros. So this means that there's a lot of research being done around Los Cedros, which is quite important. And of course, it was easy somehow, not easy, it was a big word, but it was easy to prove that this is a spectacular place that should be preserved, and where mining should not be allowed, because it's definitely an activity that will erase and will, bring to extinction so many fragile species that live in that territory. And we had the support of so many scientists from around the world who are here to verify and evidence that. So that is why this is such an important case. And we have seen, as you have said, the media around the world has been very prominent to support this. Actually, the press conference that Elisa and OMASNE organized, we had even a video from Jane Goodall, just congratulating Ecuador for this big step towards the rights of nature and towards saving such an amazing place like Los Cedros. So we know that there's the eyes of the whole scientific community and the whole world is over on Los Cedros, and congratulating this big step that the Constitutional Court has given towards the rights of nature.
I mean, I think most people would think that something that's called a protected forest, as Los Cedros was, by its name would be protected. And, alongside Los Cedros, there's 186 other protected forests, in inverted commas, because they are not protected. And only this week, I heard about the oil industry wanting to go into Yasuni National Park to another group of Warani, and to buy their concessions off of them. I mean, the Warani are related to two uncontacted tribes, the Tagari and the Taramanani. We would have thought that offered them some kind of protection. And Yasuni has all the wonderful titles. It's a World Biosphere Reserve, it's a national park, it's got uncontacted peoples. But where's the rights of nature there? That even though Yasuni has been shown that to be one of the most biodiverse places on the planet, and that yes, we have this rights of nature in the Constitution, how can it be that the state-owned oil company is also planning this very week to go in and talk to the Warani about drilling inside that territory? So I don't know if you've got ideas.
Yasuni has been drilled for a long time, although we all knew even before the Yasuni ITT initiative how biodiversity was. And that's the contradiction that I was mentioning before, that we were able to introduce rights of nature in the Constitution in 2008, but we were not able to stop extractivism. And of course, oil and mining are such a big threat to nature. And it poses that huge contradiction that we have in the country, and actually in the same Constitution, where you have Chapter 7 that recognizes the rights of nature, but you have Article 407 that allows that constitutional lock that it has, allows the president to allow oil extraction or extractivism if that signifies development, or if it signifies that the need for the country. So that is what happened with Yasuni, especially with Block 31, with the ITT, that the assembly allowed the president to go in spite of everything and all the information that we have about its biodiversity and also its cultural diversity, as you were mentioning, not only the Guaranis, but also the non-contacted indigenous people. So that is a contradiction that we live, unfortunately, every day here. And as you were saying, it's absurd to just think about a protected forest that is protected from agriculture and from cattle, but is not protected from mining. Mining is allowed in these protected forests. So actually what we were hoping from this verdict was that it will prohibit every mining activity within a protected forest. This particular verdict allows us and gives us a really important jurisprudence to work for the other 541 mining rights that are overlapped with protected areas. So we do have a model jurisprudence to go and fight for this, but it's not immediate. It's not that all protected forests right now are now safe from mining concessions. So we still have a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, some of these protected forests are not as studied as Los Cedros is. So this is something that we definitely need to consider. And there's a lot of work to do, but I feel that Los Cedros has definitely given us quite some important work to start from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's going to be many mining companies that are not happy at this at the moment. It's really kind of shone a spotlight onto them and the work and made them really question, how economically viable is this as well, if they're going to be stopped and they're going to be challenged, at every corner. And just to round this up, apart from Ecuador, how do you think this case also affects the rest of the world?
I feel that, and we have seen and we have heard from many people around the world that they have been really inspired by what's happening in Los Cedros and what's happening with other illegal cases that we have here in Ecuador, because they say, if a frog can stop mining, if a spider monkey can stop mining, then there is some hope to stop these activities that are definitely devastating the world. And I feel that this has been an example for many people to really promote the idea of the rights of nature and to understand that rights of nature is a really efficient tool to go beyond environmental law towards a real protection of nature.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. And I hope that's given the listeners a little bit more of an insight into Los Cedros. I will also be adding to this a little bit of video and sounds so that people can go on a little bit of a journey into what it sounds like at Los Cedros. So yeah, thanks again, both of you, for the amazing work that you do. I mean, OMASNE have just been awesome in kind of like shining a light on the mining companies and what's going on, and really supporting local communities, and a great organization to follow if you haven't already heard of them. And the rights of nature is something that we all really need to be aware of. And let's hope its time has come sooner rather than later. And look forward to speaking with you both again. And until the next time. So thanks a lot, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.